Hey friends, Stephanie here. I'm going to show you how I make a bias binding. Right here I've got a little less than a yard of fabric, and I am going to use this for a baby quilt that I made. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spread it out, take the bottom right, fold it up, and I usually, if I have a big quilt, I'll use a whole yard of fabric, and I'll just make a whole bunch of bias binding. Now I just took the top right and folded it down over the left. This method is something that I have learned over watching several videos of how people make a bias binding, and I've just come up with this method. It is the easiest for me, but again, do whatever makes it right for you, whatever makes you feel good about making a bias binding. This method does not scare me at all, and I know it scares people, but I'm just so used to it now, and I prefer a bias binding because it is very durable and stretchy. So I make all my quilts with a bias binding. So right now I'm just smoothing it out, and that is my biased edge right there. I will use that edge as I cut my bias strips. Now I'm just folded that up, but I still have that biased edge. I could fold it again, same direction, if it's too long for you. Now I'm squaring up the edge to my ruler, and I'm just gonna cut that very tip off, the very folded edge there on the right hand side, so I can start making my bias strips. Now I use a 2.5 inch binding because I do fold it and sew it to a quilt. So I just have the extra durable two back and it's when you fold it, you've got double durability. But I'll show you that later. So now I'm cutting my first 2.5 inch strip, and you do need 2 rulers for this. The one on the left, the clear one, is one that I bought from Missouri Star. That is actually a bias binding ruler, and I don't use it how they advertise it to be used. I just use it because it's longer. And now I'm just cutting strips of 2.5 inch wide. Now, do you see how those edges are already cut so that you could sew those edges together to make your big long piece? And that's what I do. I just sew them together to make one big long bias strip. This video is just how to make the binding. I did not show how to sew it to a quilt, simply because I did try, but it's really hard to film while you're sewing. I really need another person available to film, and then I need to have proper lighting. Something that I will work on, it is a goal of mine, is to have somebody help me with these and work on some lighting issues while you're sewing. But that will be something that comes up in the future. So now I've cut a bunch of bias strips, and I'm just kind of sorting them out. This is a baby quilt, so I'm pulling the larger strips. You will get 2 pieces from each strip when you do this method, a shorter one and a longer one. So I do pick out the bigger pieces and use them for the baby quilt. So there we go, just separating them out, I guess. Got a whole bunch of strips. So what I do next is I just sew them together, and then I fold them in half. There's my baby quilt. Isn't that gorgeous? I love that quilt. That's baby Judy's quilt. So now I've sewn the edges together and made one big strip, and I folded it. The key when you're ironing this is not to stretch it, because it is biased and it is stretchy. So this one did not stretch at all. Looks good. All right, well, please watch Steph and Momo Quilt Show Fridays at noon on YouTube, and we're also on quiltswag.com. So thank you for watching. Happy quilting. Post your comments below. Thanks.